Hey guys, what's up? It's JP back for another video, and today we're going to be going to Cairo. Like the other videos, we'll be talking about expenses at the end, but this is us arriving at the Cairo airport. Now, if you don't know anything about Cairo, it does have a reputation for being somewhat of a crazy city in more ways than one. But here is where you will see a lot of history, a lot of just amazing historical sites like this Pyramids of Giza. So this is why we made the trip out here. The Pyramids of Giza are the oldest and the only remaining world wonder of the ancient world still out there, and so this is truly a remarkable site. There are three main pyramids, but the largest of the three pyramids is this one right here, which is the Pyramid of Khufu. The center pyramid is actually the tomb of Khafre, and it may appear a little bit larger than that of Khufu's, which is sitting on the right, and it only appears this way because it is actually built on a higher elevated base. Now, these pyramids are constructed using 2.3 million blocks. And as we get through this video, you'll see how large these blocks actually are. They probably weigh well over 1,000 pounds per block. So this really gives you some idea of how just amazing these pyramids are in terms of their scale and grandeur. And while these pyramids were constructed using the help of slaves, the majority of the work that actually was used in the process of building these pyramids were actually hired labor. You can see from the scale of how these people are next to these blocks just how large these blocks are that make up this pyramid. It's just quite remarkable. Here's my wife going into Khufu's tomb, which I mentioned is on the far right, and this is actually the largest of the pyramids. This is a really bad time to figure out you have claustrophobia when you enter this pyramid. Now, entering the pyramid itself is an additional entry fee, but while you're in Egypt, of course, you want to see everything. But as you can see, this passageway is extremely narrow, and it isn't just a one-way passage, it's a two-way passage, so you have actually people that have reached the main entry into the sarcophagus, and they are making their way back out as you make your way back in, and so it is a quite tight space when you get in here. It's also pretty hot as the day progresses, particularly inside these pyramids, but if you catch it early enough, it's not too bad. And so, like I said, this is a really bad time to figure out if you have claustrophobia or not. There were a few people on this trip with us that started to have panic attacks as we kind of ascended into this pyramid. Just a word on the entry fee. Like India, these monuments do cost money, particularly high amounts of money for its tourists, but not much for its citizens, and so I kind of have my opinion about that. And like I also mentioned, Egypt does have a little bit of a reputation, and that reputation isn't necessarily a good one when it comes to the way that some people treat the tourists here. Some might say that Egypt, or Cairo itself, is kind of what they call scam city, where a lot of the people in the area actually take advantage of the tourists. We actually experienced something like this firsthand, not just on one occasion, but on multiple occasions, which I will get into a little bit later. But that was the Sphinx, which is also sitting in the monument. This is the Great Egyptian Museum, which carries all of the things that were discovered inside of those pyramids. Now, this museum is actually really nice. You could see how big this building is, which is kind of a standout in Giza, which is the city right next to Cairo. And in this museum, you're going to see all of those monuments that were discovered inside the pyramids, but also you'll see some mummies here, which I will show you later in this video. Again, there is another entry fee for this museum, and so just be prepared for that. And most of these museums, they sometimes will take credit card, but in the majority of cases they do take cash, so just be prepared for that. Now what's cool about this museum is that it does give you a little bit of a history lesson. They try to break down the exhibits per the timeline, and so they break down the museum into 3 parts. You could see here that they have a prehistoric, a middle, and a New Kingdom era, and so they try to break down the exhibits by that timeline. Unfortunately, when we were here, the Tutankhamun exhibit wasn't available for us to visit, and so we didn't see all of those amazing little gold pieces that were in that tomb, but we still saw quite a few things. Here you could see a lot of the different sarcophagus that were available at the time. This is a mummy, and you could see the different stages of the mummification there. And so this is a worthwhile trip, particularly if you're going to be spending more than 1 day in Giza. Our next stop here is something called Coptic Cairo, and this is the birthplace of Christianity in Cairo, or in Egypt. Now the Holy Family actually spent time in Cairo when they were actually fleeing Jerusalem for the purposes of protecting Jesus from King Herod. And they have a lot of different areas here you can visit, not just limited to obviously the Christian faith, but they also have monuments here that are also Jewish in nature. And so this is a pretty remarkable place. This fountain here you see is actually one of the wells that the Holy Family drank from, and so that's why they've actually kept this running like this. So I was talking to you about how Egypt has a reputation for being what's called the scam city, and the reason for that is because a lot of the people that live here do try to scam tourists into paying more than they actually should. On more than one occasion while we were here, we would try to book Ubers, and the Uber drivers would at the last minute say that they only take cash, despite the fact that we've booked the car with our phone using a credit card. And so that's just one thing that they will do here, is that they will take advantage of the Uber application to try to get you to drive, and they will end up charging you cash, which is going to be double or triple even in terms of the price that they suggest. The conversion in terms of the money here in Cairo is obviously very favorable towards the US, but this is not a reason that you should be scamming or ripping tourists off just because of that reason. They would also do this at stores where you would be charged double or sometimes triple the amount that they would normally charge for a bottle of water. And so that's just something that really turned me off about Cairo. Now this church right here is the Church of Sergius and Bacchus, which is actually a church that was built over one of these little hotels that was known to actually refuge the Holy Family, and so they actually built this entire church over that hotel just because of the fact that the Holy Family did live in the basement of this big hotel. And so that's one interesting thing here. And you can see all of this amazing art that is hanging on the walls. This is actually the well that the Holy Family also drank from. And you actually get an opportunity here to tour the basement area, which has the original flooring in which the Holy Family actually stood on. And so this is a pretty interesting place in all of Christian faith, where you actually get to walk into the footsteps of the Holy Family. And it's actually one of the safer areas you can visit these days. With all of the crazy things happening in Israel, there isn't a lot of places you can see where you can actually trace the footsteps of the Holy Family, or Jesus for that matter, that are safe to actually travel to. And so I would suggest that as one big plus in terms of Cairo, is that you can actually do a faith journey around here if you are Catholic, and feel safe doing so while you're here, as opposed to going to Jerusalem. And there is a lot of history here. Coptic Cairo also once housed the Coptic Pope at one point, and so that's actually just an interesting tidbit. You can see how it traces the path that the Holy Family took in terms of its refuge from Jerusalem. And just looking at this place, you could tell that it's old and it has a lot of different history there. We took a minute here and just had a little meal. We also took in this Tower of Babylon, which is one of those areas where the Romans once stood tall here. And this leads to another church. This is called the Hanging Church because it actually is built over the gatehouse of this Tower of Babylon. Again, just a nice monument in terms of the church, a lot of history here. I believe it actually housed one of the popes, the Coptic Pope at one point, and so it's just a nice church to kind of visit and see because of its history. But like I was saying, Egypt does have its challenges. Cairo in particular has its challenges just because of the environment and how tourists are, generally speaking, taken advantage of with regards to how people treat them and see them as basically being dollar signs. And so just be aware of that and be careful if you do plan on visiting Egypt. We ran into a couple of other tourists on our trip here, and some of them had the same opinion of Egypt. And what they essentially advise us to do is to just kind of let it happen because it's so prevalent throughout the area where tourists are just constantly being taken advantage of in terms of the price of everything. It's not as if it's a really big upcharge in terms of what you're being given in terms of this because of the fact that there is such a favorable conversion for the dollar, but it's still quite annoying and irritating to have to always barter and haggle with everybody, just trying to figure out whether or not something is worth doing. Another thing you also want to be careful about are the people on the streets, sometimes promising things and essentially charging at the end. They'll first say something is free, and then later on will say that something isn't necessarily free, and so just be aware they can also charge that way, and it can actually end up being quite dangerous as some of the people can get quite aggressive. So just be aware of all of these things going on because, like I said, you don't want to have a problem, particularly when you're on vacation. If you haven't already, please hit that like button. I certainly appreciate it, and it does help in terms of promoting the video, and so it's greatly appreciated. But thanks for tagging along with us. Our next stop here is something called the Saladin Citadel. Now, this citadel sits on top of a hill, and it's visible from a lot of different parts of Cairo, and it used to actually be the government seat of all of Cairo at one point, and it sat there for quite a time. The most remarkable landmark in this citadel is probably this Mosque of Muhammad Ali, and this is actually called the Alabaster Mosque due to its use of a lot of the different alabaster, and it's quite a beautiful mosque. You could see just how beautiful all of the lights are and how tall the ceilings are, and just a pretty remarkable mosque that sits right in this citadel. And so this is probably the most prominent structure you'll see from the view of Cairo. And here you can see all of the view of the different surroundings, and you can see the pyramids here off in the distance. And so those pyramids are pretty much something you can see visibly from a lot of different angles of the city. Also sitting in this citadel are other areas that you can visit. There's another mosque here that you will see. In addition, they do have also a national museum here for the police and for the army, which you'll be able to see later in the video. But just a nice little history lesson here in terms of just everything around this area. This was, like I said, the government seat for quite a time in Cairo, and so there is a lot of history in terms of the government that is structured here. This is actually a prison where you will see some areas of the places where they house the criminals. But again, this this sits right on top of a very big hill, and so you could see this citadel from pretty much anywhere in Cairo. And this is the part of the museum where you will see the tribute to the history of its army. This is part of the tour that my son really enjoyed just because of the tanks, which you could see here. And so yeah, just a nice exhibit. Again, there is an entry fee, and again there is a premium that is being charged for its tourists, so just be aware. But I do believe they take credit card at this spot, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, again, that's something that always kind of just turns me off as a tourist, is that all of these locations that do upcharge everything for its tourists, it's just, I don't understand the reasoning behind it. It actually just turns off people to visiting the place. But whatever the case is, it's you know, still worthwhile visiting it just because you're here once in a lifetime. Our next stop here is Khan el-Khalili, and this is one of the oldest street markets of all of Cairo, and it's quite busy here. And these are basically souks, traditional souks that you'll see. And you can wander the streets here for quite a time. There are a lot of different winding streets, and it's all generally areas where you could walk, so that's the nice thing about this. But while you see this, let me talk costs with you briefly. We spent $68 on lodging, which is a steal considering how long we stayed here. The transportation costs, like I mentioned, were a little bit on the higher end, just because we had to negotiate with a bunch of our Uber drivers, so that was about $800 in addition to our flights, obviously, and visa costs. Food, we spent $94. We spent $315 on various tours that included also the price of various monuments, and that brings our grand total to about $12,089 with a per day average of about $322. Still quite reasonable. I would suggest Egypt is a definite tour-worthy location. Just be very careful and, you know, make sure that you are aware of your surroundings. It's not entirely the safest city, but it's definitely safer than most areas around it. And so if you do plan on coming here, it's definitely worthwhile just because of the historical value of this location. But that said, that pretty much ended our trip, and now we're going to be heading over to Casablanca, to Morocco, and so that's the next stop on our journey here. But I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe the video. I'll see you in Morocco. Thanks.